When I first found FPV, the thing that appealed to me the most about it was the idea that I could fly. I don't mean just like look up from the ground at an aircraft in the air. I mean that feeling you get when you put the goggles on and it just feels like you're flying. And I got that feeling when I got into FPV for a very short period of time, because as the novelty wore off, I started to feel the limitations of FPV way more severely. Limitations like limited video range, fail-safes, and short flight times. Now, a lot of those limitations have kind of been solved. But one of those limitations that hasn't been solved is flight time. And that's why I'm so excited to fly I don't even mean excited to bring you the Flywoo Explorer LR. I'm just excited to have gotten to fly it. This thing can do easily 10 or 12 minutes of flight time. And with the right battery packs, it can do 30, or some have reported even as many as like almost 40 minutes of flight time. It can fly long enough that finally you can just get up there in the sky and kind of lose yourself. Am I going to fail safe? Am I going to lose video? Am I going to run my battery dead? You can just go up there and cruise around and have that beautiful out-of-body experience that I didn't even know I was missing for all the other times I was flying. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. This is the Flywoo Explorer. And in order to understand whether this is going to be a drone that you want to get, we first have to define what it's even like trying to be. Because the Flywoo Explorer is not intended as a racing drone, and it's not intended as a freestyle drone. It is a long-range cruiser, which is going to seem pretty weird because it's got 4-inch props, and it weighs under 250 grams with the right battery. And I'm going to bet that when you think of a long-range cruiser, you think of like a 6 or 7-inch propped quadcopter, something more in like the 900 gram to a kilogram range with a big 2800 milliamp hour battery. But Dave C., the guy who designed the frame and build that this is inspired by, this is built by Flywoo, but explicitly inspired by Dave C., and I don't know, maybe even in partnership with him. So this is basically based on his design. He went a different direction. If you watch Dave C's video where he talks about this design, I'll put a link to that in the video description, and you can check it out when this video is over if you want to. If you watch his video, he talks about how a 7-inch cruiser, it's big, it's heavy, it's expensive, it's kind of a risk if you crash it or lose it. And wouldn't it be nice if you could get all the advantages of a long-range cruiser, long flight time, etc., without having to put all that on the line? The analog version of this quad costs $150. And one of the big fears of long-range flying, that you'll lose the quad, has a lot less sting if there's only $150 on the line. Only $150 on the line compared to $500 or $600. So let's break down the specs of this build, and we'll start with the weight. The dry weight of this build is 167 grams. This is the version with the Caddx Vista on it, so it's going to have a little bit of additional weight compared to the all analog version, but you're going to get that sweet, sweet digital DJI goodness. The motors are 1404 in size and 2750 kV. And Dave C. talks about how the 1404 size was arrived at basically because anything smaller just didn't have enough torque to handle the 4-inch prop very well. The goal of the 4-inch prop is to produce a disc loading more similar to a larger quad so that you can get some of that stability that larger quads have. If you compare like a 5-inch quad to a 3-inch quad, the 3-inch is very nimble and loose, and it just doesn't have that kind of stability that you really would want from a long-range cruiser. The 2750 KV can be used with either 3S or 4S, and this quad can be used with a wide variety of batteries depending on your goals for the flight. You can use it with as small as like a 3S or 4S 450 milliamp hour pack, and that does get it below the 250 gram limit if that's a concern for you. You can go all the way up to a 3S 1000 milliamp hour for the longest flight time, or actually a 3S 18650 cell lithium ion 3000 milliamp hour pack. Dave has flown it for something like 38 minutes on those cells. Obviously, it's a lot heavier and a lot less nimble, but you get that crazy, crazy flight time. So you could put a small 4S or a big 3S or maybe even a big 4S on here, depending on whether you're going for agility or flight time. But there are some concerns. One of the concerns is that this quad uses a 16 millimeter flight stack. And that 16 millimeter ESC is just going to be that much more likely to pop if used on 4S compared to 3S. To be clear, it is officially rated for both 3S and 4S, but you're just running a little closer to the edge on 4S, and you're going to find it's going to have a little more durability on 3S. The other concern when thinking about kitting out for endurance versus agility is the durability of the frame. This frame it's reasonably durable, but you can just see from the thin arms that it's not designed for freestyle crashing and bando bashing. It does come with these braces, and they increase the strength substantially, or at least they would be expected to increase the strength substantially. I haven't done any, finite stress analysis on it. A lot of people who are flying long range will take these braces off to save just a little bit of weight. If you do break an arm, the arms are interchangeable, so you could just take it out and swap a new arm in, but you probably are going to look somewhere else if you're thinking about racing or hardcore freestyle. So 3S is probably going to be the smart way to kit this quad out. And if you do that, the hover point ends up, well, it obviously depends on how much load you're carrying. But for me, with an all-up weight of around 260 grams, no GoPro or anything, I ended up hovering right about 50% on the throttle. And that's a little higher than I'm used to. With a 4S battery on it, it was hovering down closer to 30-35%. Obviously, I wasn't like looking at the throttle, but it was a little bit more like I would expect, and I had just that little bit more punch and pop if I wanted to do freestyle. But to tell the truth, this quad just isn't designed for freestyle. It's never going to have the level of response and thrust that you want from a freestyle quad. And you can do light freestyle with it, but that's just not really where its focus is at. One of the risks with any quad is that if you crash it, you may not be able to find it again. And that risk is especially true with a longer range quad. To help solve that, Flywoo has included this self-powered buzzer. And it works just like a buzzer normally does, but it's got something extra. You can see right here that there's a small 1-cell lithium battery attached to the buzzer. And the way that works is when you plug it in, well, First of all, it's way louder than the buzzer. It's way louder than the buzzers normally are, which just makes it easier to find the quad. But then, when you unplug, it actually stays powered up. You can see the beeping here. So if you've crashed or your battery has died, or for some reason you can't activate your buzzer during the normal method, after a few moments of unplugging, it will begin to beep. And if you forget to disarm it, then you're going to put your quad in your backpack, throw it in the trunk of your car, and then it's just going to start beeping at you from the back, and you're going to be like, what are you doing? So the way to disarm it is, let it beep one time first. Looks like it takes a minute. There we go. It's also got a blinking light here to help you find it if it's dark. It's kind of cool. The way to disarm it is that there's a button right here. You can kind of see it underneath the plastic, and you just hold that button for about 2 seconds, and it disarms the buzzer. I didn't see that button at first, and it took me forever to make the freaking thing stop beeping. Before we go out and see how the Flywoo Explorer flies, let's just take a quick look in Betaflight at some of the settings. There are a couple of these settings you're going to want to be aware of, and a couple of them that you might want to change. And the first thing I want to look at is the OSD tab. This is how I ended up setting up my OSD for DJI. One thing to keep in mind is that the way this looks on screen here is not exactly how it's going to look in the DJI goggles, especially if you're using widescreen. It's going to get spread out a little bit. And that's extremely true when you look at the default OSD as delivered by Flywoo. It just looks like a total freaking mess on the analog screen. If you were flying the analog version, you'd barely be able to see where you were freaking going. You're going to notice that I've turned off the GPS coordinates, for example, right? GPS lat and GPS longitude. And the reason for that is that the DJI goggles don't record the Betaflight OSD. So there's no point in having the GPS coordinates on screen. It's not like you're going to be able to remember what they were if and when it goes down. If you lose link, would they stay up? I don't think that's very useful. Speaking of the on-screen display, if we go here to the ports tab, one of the things you're going to see is that they have run out of UARTs on this flight controller. The flight controller only has 2 actual UARTs, and one's used for the receiver and one's used for the GPS. They are using soft serial for the MSP connection that lets the DJI goggles show on-screen display. And this is causing some problems. A lot of people are reporting that the on-screen display either drops out or, even worse, locks up. If it locks up when you're flying, then you may not even know it's happened until you get to the point you're like, why is my battery not going down? Oh, well, I guess I'll keep flying. And then your quadcopter falls out of the air. I'm not sure whether it would have been better to use GPS on soft serial. GPS, as you can see, is only 9600 baud, and it may have been easier for the processor to keep up with this. Nevertheless, that's how they've delivered it, and that's how most people are going to fly it. And I don't really think there's a great solution for this. It's surprising to me that they are not using bidirectional D-shot and RPM filtering. Most people agree that that makes quadcopters fly better, and with the latest developments, even BLHeli-S ESCs can support it. My best guess is that they want to keep the CPU utilization down so that soft serial can work as reliably as possible, and they've got it turned off. I almost would rather switch from D-shot 300 to D-shot 150 if that would let me get bidirectional D-shot working and RPM filtering. That being said, the quadcopter didn't have any signs of problems with its filtering and it flew pretty good. Maybe bidirectional D-shot is less important in a case where the quad's already flying pretty well. Here are my flight modes, and you can see I'm using my all flight modes on one aux channel method. You see all my aux modes are on a single aux channel, aux1. I've got a video about how to set that up if you want to conserve aux channels. It's a little complicated, but it's a great way to do that. Here is how Flywoo delivered the aux modes, and you're going to want to at least take a look at this because chances are the exact way you've set up your switches on your controller isn't going to match exactly how Flywoo has set it up. I feel like aux modes are very personal, and everyone should set theirs up their own way. One thing you will see is I've set up GPS rescue. You're going to want to enable GPS rescue on an aux switch, and you're going to want to have that switch dedicated just to that function so you can easily trigger GPS rescue on and off while you're flying. If we look here in the failsafe tab, we can also see that the quad ships with GPS rescue set as the failsafe method. And what that means is that if you fail safe, the quad will attempt to fly home. However, if for some reason it can't, it will just disarm and fall out of the air. One thing you're definitely going to want to take note of is that allow arming without fix is enabled. And here's what that means. You need a minimum of 5 satellites in order for GPS rescue to try to return home. Normally, Betaflight will not allow you to arm the quad unless you have the required number of satellites. However, if you were flying like in a parking garage or something, or maybe you just want to do some freestyle and you don't care about GPS rescue, you would not be able to take off, and some people find that annoying. Allow arming without fix lets you take off without the minimum number of satellites locked, but if you do that, then if you activate GPS rescue, the quad will simply fall out of the sky. And that is even if subsequently in flight, it gets the minimum number. So you take off with 4 satellites and while you're flying, you get 8 satellites and then you try and activate GPS rescue. No, it does not have a home point locked unless it has the minimum sats locked at the time you arm, and it will just fall out of the air. So if you take off without the minimum number of satellites, do not try to activate GPS rescue. It will not work, and the quad will literally just disarm and fall out of the air. It will not just go, nah, you just keep flying it. It'll just fall out of the air. You could always disable that, and then you would be prevented from arming without the number of satellites, if you prefer. The other change you're going to want to consider is sanity checks Sanity checks mean that the quadcopter checks to make sure that everything is going right before it activates GPS rescue. And the two sanity checks that are most important are the number of satellites and the distance from home. If you are not at least 100 meters from home, the quadcopter will not do GPS rescue. It'll just fall out of the sky. If you set the sanity checks to failsafe only, then when you manually trigger GPS rescue, the sanity checks won't be checked. And if anything is going wrong, you'll be responsible for disabling the GPS rescue mode and taking over. The other thing you can do is sanity checks on, and they will always sanity check. But the problem is if any sanity check fails, again, the quad will just fall out of the air. So I would suggest setting this to failsafe only. And if you trigger it by an aux switch, you just need to be aware that it might go bonkers and you need to take over. The other thing we see here is that aux 3, which was originally set for GPS rescue in the default settings, is set to failsafe to a value of 2000. And I don't understand this. The intention here is that when failsafe happens, this aux mode will trigger GPS rescue. But GPS rescue is already set as our failsafe method, so that really shouldn't be necessary. So I don't think there's any reason to have your GPS rescue set to a fixed position. I think you just want that set to hold and just let failsafe take over and do its thing. To tell you the truth, you really got to see this quad in the air to fully appreciate what it brings to the table. So let's go out and fly it, and we'll finish up the review there. I am safe to fly. We have 5 satellites. I'm a little surprised we don't have more than 5 satellites locked. We're just sitting under the sky, but we do have 5 satellites locked, and we're only 41 megabits per second right here next to the goggles. That's let's get in the air. Let's get in the air and see if it gets any better. Now, unfortunately, you will not be able to see the on-screen display from the Betaflight OSD because the DJI goggles don't record that. Flying good. Not doing any hard punches or anything. Or freestyle. Not doing any... That's a full throttle punch out, so not much to speak of, but... The corner's okay. I shouldn't crash it, and I shouldn't push it too hard while the battery's low. I'm just saying. You can do a little bit of flippy fly. Oh, full throttle. Yeah, oops. That was full throttle right there. Well, I've only got 4 satellites. It just doesn't seem to pick up the satellites on the ground. I don't know why. Let's go ahead and get in the air. I am bound up on some grass. My OSD is dropping out. Kind of need the OSD, guys. You need the OSD when you're flying like this because you need to know how many satellites you've got. You need to know if you are safe to come home. 50 megabits per second, still holding in there, 4 bars, no problem. Now, if I fly too far over this ridge, I will lose signal. So this is about as far as I'm going to go, but we're just holding at 50 meg, rock solid. Distance from home is 650 meters. Let's turn this way and go down the ridge a little bit. 30 megabits per second. Again, you can check the subtitles down below. Direction home looks good. And I'm gonna just turn my head a little bit. 50 megabits per second, just holding in there. Beautiful. Just beautiful. What a view. What a view. Turn my head a little. 15 megabits per second. Now it's starting to drop. I'm getting a little drop out as I make this turn. Which way is home? I don't know. 2 megabits per second, not very encouraging. Good thing I got 7 satellites though. Let's come back up this way. I should get the signal back. Oh, that's fun. That's just so fun. Just so fun. Crossfire is holding at 99%, no problem. As long as I'm right on the beam, I get 50 megabits per second, easy peasy. Oh, hello. Oh, there's a neighborhood up here. Yeah, 50 megabits per second here. I'm just right, home is like right there, so I'm right in my own beam. Only 600 meters away, so I'm not gonna fly down over this ridge because if I go too low, I will lose signal behind the mountain, and if I go too high, I will be pushing the rules a little more than I would prefer to. So let's just do a little dive down here. Oh yeah, beautiful. Now I don't know, let's see what happens if I go lower. Like, can I get down close to these trees? What about down here? Oh yeah, okay, we definitely get some break up here. So fun. It's so smooth. It's really smooth. I mean, I guess we would need a GoPro to know for sure how smooth it was. In the goggles, it looks really nice and smooth. Do some tree cruising to finish out this pack. Let's see. What's our flight time? 9 minutes flight time. 3.6 volts. I'm going to keep flying it just to see how long I can. Such a gentle little cruiser. Just the kind of dream of FPV, to be able to fly wherever you want. Wherever you want, just go there with minimal concern about fail-safing. Just look and go and experience kind of that out-of-body experience. We're not doing crazy flippy flops. We're just enjoying the ability to fly. A little hard to pick out the branches of those situations. I got a bug on me. 3.6 volts, we could still keep flying. Like, I wouldn't want to put myself in a situation where I might have to fight the wind too much right now, but I can just .5 volts. Now we're coming to where I would usually land, but still 3.6, 3.5. So that was 11 minutes of flight time on these packs, approximately 900 milliamp hours 3S, but then overcharged, so maybe closer to around 1,000 milliamp hour 3S, easily 11 minutes of just fun flying, going wherever you want. It's pretty freaking cool. So that brings us to the end of the video, and as always, the question, should you buy it? And we have to at least acknowledge that if you decide you want to buy it, you may not be able to. A whole lot of people are super annoyed right now because they pre-ordered the Flywoo Explorer, some as much as months ago, and it still hasn't come. The holdup seems to be that Flywoo is having trouble sourcing the Caddx Vista for the Vista builds. People ordering the analog build seem to be getting it. So if you order it, you may end up having to wait a little while to get it. But setting that aside for now, should you order it? And I think for a whole lot of people, the answer to the question is going to be yes. For a whole lot of people, the answer to the question has been yes. A ton of people have been buying this and are super excited about it. What makes this so exciting, I think, is it just takes off the pressure to go fast and to do flippy flops and just lets you enjoy being up in the air and flying around and almost not even thinking too much about your battery dying, because you can fly for 8 or 10 minutes, and by the time you've done that, you're kind of a little bit ready to land and take a break. That's the appeal of this quadcopter, and if that appeals to you, then I can highly recommend it. The biggest caveat, I suppose, is, well, the OSD locking up is super annoying, and there just doesn't seem to be a fix for that. So maybe that's a deal breaker. If that is a deal breaker, Sorry, Flywoo, but we got to acknowledge that both iFlight, GepRC are sending me their version of this same category of 4-inch long range, and maybe they'll be better. And surely more will follow. But the Flywoo Explorer has got to have some appeal, at least in part because they have partnered with Dave C, and they have explicitly acknowledged Dave C, and maybe they've even got some kind of a deal with Dave C where he's getting a little bit of a cut of each sale. I would certainly think that would be fair if that were true, because Dave C, as much as anybody, has pioneered this whole category. Have you heard of 4-inch long range before now? I hadn't, and I'll bet a lot of people didn't, but Dave worked his butt off to design, if not this exact frame, the frame that this is based off of, to come up with the right props, the right motors, and just to basically create this whole category in a very real sense. And in as much as Flywoo has partnered with him and acknowledged with him, that certainly deserves some weight in your buying decision. But if you want to see the iFlight and the GepRC review, they will be coming up on my channel, so definitely make sure you get subscribed and hit the notification bell to be sure you don't miss that. On the other hand, if you want to put in an order for the Flywoo Explorer, the Vista version is $300, the analog version is $150, and it's just hard to imagine anything you can get for $150 that has more fun value than that. There are links in the video description down below, and they are affiliate links. And that means that if you make any purchase after you click that link, I get a small percentage of the purchase price. It's a great way for you to help support the channel and the work I do here. Just click the affiliate link, make your purchase, check out. I get a small commission. It costs you nothing. What do you think? Flywoo Explorer, 4-inch long range. Super exciting? Waiting for the next revision, or not even interested at all? You just want to do flippy flops and race? Let me know in the comments what you think of this category. Thanks for watching. Happy flying. What are you still doing here? The video's over. Do you watch all the videos all the way to the end? Wow, you are a super fan. Thank you. That actually helps the channel a lot when you watch the videos all the way to the end. YouTube loves that. You know what else YouTube loves? When you subscribe, or when you join my Patreon for as little as $2 a month, or more if you feel like I've earned. Actually, YouTube doesn't like you to join my Patreon. They don't get a cut of that.